first cantorial job I had. I was 19 years old. I get a call in the middle of August from Heinz Frank. Heinz Frank was the executive director of the Canadian Jewish Congress. They had, of course, a big branch in Montreal, and our little city, Jewish city, 24,000 Jews, but what Jews? Oh, so anyway, I get called from Heinz Frank. Hello, Herschel, how are you? And he had a slight German accent. And I said, hi, Mr. Frank, how are you? How did you know it was me? If I knew what Kissinger sounded like, I would have said, it's either you or Kissinger, right? He says, listen, I will cut to the chase. He says, there was an older man coming to Western Canada, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta. There were dozens of little Städtlach, we would call them, little Jewish cities. And they would get a cantor for the high holidays. Look, I hope no rabbis are watching this. They didn't care if they didn't get a rabbi, but a cantor, they had to have a cantor, right? He said, Rabbi tells you the page and he talks. Okay, I hope I'm not rustling any feathers, but okay, this was it. So he says, he's very sick. The older guy who used to be their chazan for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur in North Battleford, Saskatchewan. And I pretended like I heard. I didn't know where North Battleford, I never heard of it, right? So what happens? He says he can't come this year, and it's just too much for him. So they have room for a new guy. What were you planning to do, Rosh Hashanah? I said, the truth is, I was planning to be my last year, singing. So I sang for Brownstone as a kid, and now I was in the choir singing bass. You know, there was no baritone. I was a baritone, so either tenor or bass. Easier to sing the bass, right? So I said, I was gonna just make this my last year with Brownstone. He said, take this job. I said, why? I said, I want to sing one more year with Brownstone. He says, they don't have a rabbi. There's no Baal Shachris. You'll have to do Shachris. You'll have to do Musaf. You'll get a lot of practice. And I got it through my thick skull. And I said, this is going to be the best thing I could do. I'll do Shemona Esrei one way, Shachris, then another way, Musaf. I knew that this would be a phenomenal experience, okay? So I said to him, well, how do I get there? He says, okay, it's $500, and what's going to happen is you're going to take a train from Winnipeg to Saskatoon, but there's no train to North Battleford. So from Saskatoon, you'll take the bus to North Battleford. I do it. So I asked him again, how will I know who the people picking me up? He said, it'll be two older Jewish men. They'll pick you up and they'll take you to where you're going to stay. So what happens? I get to North Battleford, I get off. There's about 40, 50 people in the bus station. And I have to meet the two guys who are going to meet me. I don't know who they are. I'm looking. Finally, there's just two old little men. And I could tell by the way they were talking, using their hands, that they were Jewish. And they took a look at me and they became white. I knew why. I was 19, but you know how old I am now. I don't have to say it publicly, but I look 10, 12 years younger. When I was 19, honestly, I looked like I was 13 years old. And they assumed I didn't know Yiddish, of course, because the younger people in smaller towns already, the younger Jewish guys didn't know Yiddish. And one says to the other, Oi, sind in mir reingefallen. Boy, did we fall into it. Der kanadische Jiddische Kongress hat uns geschickt a Jüngele. They sent us a little boy. This is a chazan? This is a cantor? Ich bin Mashiach chaz v'shula. Das is nicht a chazan. This is not a chazan. And they look at me. They don't even say hello. And one of them says to me with a thick Jewish accent, you think that you could be the chazan for Rosh Hashanah? I said, absolutely. And I was having the time of my life. They're talking to each other. Oh, Halzach Gross, he thinks he's a big man. He says, of course, yeah, absolutely, I cannot help it. So the other guy says to me, he says, do you feel okay if we took you, that Mr. Wurb should hear you daven, if you're okay? If you know your stuff? And I loved it, because, we were Orthodox choirs. We rehearsed all summer for the last 10, 12 years. We all knew that most of the davening by heart. Of course I want to be tested. So we go downtown, wherever, through the downtown. I see the Word building. I figure they're taking me because he's the richest guy in town. He wasn't. But he was so knowledgeable. We go to his house, and he's looking like he sees the two guys, but he doesn't know who I am. He says, where's the Chazan? Where's the Cantor? He said, this is the Chazan. He goes, oh my God, this is the Chazan. Guess what happens? He says, Mr. Chazan, would you mind if I heard you do a little bit from the Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur? And I say, not at all, please. He says, I'll go get a machzor. I knew I would know the main service parts by heart. I figured I'm going to blow this guy's mind. I said, no, I don't need a machzor. Oh, take a look who he thinks he is, who's talking here. So he goes to me, sing for me, uv'shoifer gudli tuka. Now that's a little bit of a trick question because the prayer begins at unetana tokef, and halfway goes to Shofar Gadol. And then the last paragraph, of course, Berosh Hashanah Yikategu. So I decide I'm gonna give this guy on his way. And Shofar Gadol Yitaka, of course, everybody watching knows that means with the big shofar will sound. I don't remember notes for it, but Shofar Gadol Yitaka. I blew it. And then the next line says, V'koil de momo dako. Yishama, and a still, quiet voice will be heard. And I go, and then I go with the words, the angels are going, and I go all the better. This guy is like, it's not that I'm not a great singer, but we knew our stuff because of Cantor Brownstone. We were some 7 years old. We did entire summers of learning this stuff. He says, can you hold it? No evil eye befall you. And then he says, that means a Jewish vow. And then he says, can I talk to my friends? He says to the two guys at Yiddish, says, thank God that old guy couldn't do it. We got our guy. I'm a chai, and this guy davens a pleasure, right? So that was my first high holidays. And I'll never forget it because they were so kind to me.